flying single-engine planes. In October 1940, he went to the Messerschmitt Aircraft Works in Augsburg, Bavaria. Hope I pronounced Augsburg right. And he told them that he wanted to start training on the Messerschmitt Bf-110, which is a twin-engine airplane with a lot better range than your typical single-engine. And he received instruction on how to fly from a Messerschmitt test pilot, and the company held a plane for his own personal use, which is nice of them.
Well, I mean...
yeah.
But...
Hitler, one of Hitler's best friends, you're not going to be like,
your government number 3, guy number 3,
No.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
They probably didn't make him pay for it either.
No, I'm sure they didn't. They probably didn't even make him pay for the gas.
Or all the upgrades.
Yeah, they did upgrade it a bit. They installed a radio compass, long-range drop tanks, which are fuel tanks. Reportedly modified the oxygen delivery system, though I'm not sure exactly what was done there. That's all I heard.
I would imagine that if they were extending the range of the plane regarding fuel,
They might want to add some oxygen tanks.
they would probably have upgraded the oxygen system to match it.
Probably, yeah.
I would guess that as well. It seems like oxygen would be an important component to flight.
Right, directly following fuel, yes.
I don't know. Oxygen might be even more important than fuel.
You
One
can have
could
a ton
argue,
of fuel, and if you can't breathe and black out, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alternately, if you run out of fuel, you might be able to pilot the plane to a safer landing,
Maybe.
even if the fuel runs out, as long as you have oxygen.
So we're both right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to call this a win-win. So where are we at here? May 10th, the day of reckoning at 5:45 p.m., Hess climbed into his Messerschmitt, took off from the airport at Augsburg, and flew northwest, eventually turned north, hit the coast of the North Sea right around Bremerhaven, Germany, turned east for a bit to stay out of the range of British radar, and then turned north-northwest. At 9 p.m., he turned west-southwest and headed towards the northern part of England.
So hang on here, Joe, just so people get an idea. He took off, he headed, and he basically did a kind of a zigzag north is what he was doing until he got to Scotland, and then he was hanging basically a 180-degree turn, correct?
Not a 180, really.
Or-
It was
well,
like... It was a zigzag, but yeah, he went west-northwest and then basically made a 90-degree turn and headed he headed north-northwest and then made a 90-degree turn and headed west-southwest.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think part of it is he was killing a little bit of time because he wanted it to be dark when he actually hit England, and so it was dark. He actually did sort of kill some time out at sea too, waiting for it to get dark, and then flew over the northern part of England at about 50 feet of altitude. So he was picked up on the radar, and some RAF fighters were scrambled to intercept him, but they couldn't find him because he was flying so low.
Well, the thing that I didn't understand for a long time when I was doing the reading is why was he killing so much frickin' time? Why didn't he just leave later in the day?
That would have been a good idea.
Well, it turns out he was following is it the Blitzkrieg? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was following a group of planes and tagging along on their navigation to get himself to Britain. So he was following a suite of bombers that were heading for London that day. That's the reason he left when he did, instead of saying, well, why don't I leave like an hour and a half later and then I don't have to dink around in the middle of the ocean flying in circles.
I mean, that was probably a good idea just for radars as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Although you don't want to be tagging along with those guys when they actually reach Britain, because
No.
the RAF is going to be after you.
Oh, yeah.
That's right, yeah, but yeah.
A lot of flack in the air at that point.
Oh, that too, yeah. So yeah, you understand why he didn't fly just directly to London and then north from
He didn't
there.
leave them.
He wouldn't
Yeah,
be
that
doing
was not a good
no.
idea.
Yeah. A little after 10 p.m., he was picked up on radar, as I said, and he flew north into Scotland. He was mostly navigating by landmarks, which would be kind of tricky in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was having trouble finding his destination, which was a place called Dungavel House, and I could be pronouncing that incorrectly. I looked it up on the internet, and I got 3 different pronunciations of
Pronunciations,
it. So.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Well, and the reason he was having such a hard time in the dark, though, is because it's wartime. Everybody was keeping their lights off at night.
Yeah.
Or
I know.
shuttering their windows. So
I
there
know.
was nothing to navigate by.
I know. So, well, there's landmarks still.
But, I
There's
mean,
water,
no light on the ground to
mountains.
say,
Yeah.
oh, this should be X
This
town.
should be this town. Yeah, I know. That it would be. It was a tricky thing, and but anyway, the Dungavel House is the home of the Duke of Hamilton. It's not that anymore. Now it's like an immigrant detention center somehow. So somehow the Duke of Hamilton lives somewhere else now. The Duke was a friend of Hess's friend Albrecht Haushofer, who had a lot of English contacts. In fact, there was lots of contacts between the British aristocracy and a lot of the German aristocracy, because they all knew each other. They're aristocracy. You know, they're all like kind of family. Hess thought that Hamilton was would be sympathetic to his peace mission. And again, there's a little bit of back and forth about exactly why he believed that. I'll talk about that in more detail later. Some people think that perhaps MI6 tricked him into thinking that there was a whole bunch of people in Britain that would be really receptive to his peace proposal. So that's one theory that's out there.
Well, and then there's also the Anglo-Germanic Society? Was that what it was called?
Yeah, I think it was the Anglo-German Friendship Society.
Something like that. Yeah, that was I think also one of the big theories of why he thought he would be sympathetic.
Yeah. And also the Duke had access to King George VI, and that'd be a big bonus. Had an airstrip because
highly important for
Very
an airplane.
Important.
And the Duke of Hamilton, it turns out, was also an airplane enthusiast like Hess, so they had something in common there. I should also note it was rumored that a number of members of the royal family were pro-German, or at least not in favor of war with Germany, which really wouldn't be too outlandish when you consider that they're actually part German themselves. You know, the House of Windsor actually did not begin until 1917, when they changed their name from, the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, which doesn't exactly sound British. And, so the name change was due to anti-German sentiment in World War I.
Which there was a lot of.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. And so now they're the Windsors. Anyway, back to Rudolf Hess and his plane. He was having trouble finding the Duke's house, so he flew west to the First of Clyde, where he oriented himself, and then he flew back inland. But by the time he was back in the vicinity of Dungavel, he was low on fuel, and he had picked up a little company.
Shocking.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, an RAF interceptor finally began pursuit of him. And I forget the name of the plane. It's an interesting-looking plane. Instead of having forward guns in the wings like most fighters you think of having, this one didn't have those, but it had, behind the pilot, there was a turret with a couple of gun barrels sticking out of it.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't look this plane up.
Yeah, it's a strange looking little plane.
Weird.
So it would almost have been, if you were to imagine it being a two-seater, the second seat was actually the gun?
Yeah, it was actually the gunner, yeah.
Weird.
Sitting there in a raised turret over the pilot's seat. Handy because you can shoot to your side, I guess. And you just got to be careful not to shoot your wings off or anything.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. That's probably the first thing to cover in training.
Yeah, seems like.
Day one, don't shoot the wing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you'll get a black mark on your record.
That was at 10:30 at night, you said?
Yeah, that was 10:30 at night. Hess decided it was time to bail, so he climbed to 6,000 feet and jumped out. And luckily, he had a parachute on. And he landed about 10 miles northwest of his destination, near the village of Eaglesham, which is actually pretty close when you consider it was dark and he didn't have much in the way of navigational aids.
Yeah, just like a compass, right?
Super lucky.
Compass, and that was, he was seen parachuting in by a local farmer named David McLean. McLean found him on the ground wrestling with his parachute, and he had a very badly wrenched ankle. McLean was armed with a pitchfork and essentially took him prisoner. And
how did he see him coming down?
I'm not really sure. Maybe there was a moon that night.
There must have been. If he was navigating at that time of night by landmark, there must have been at least a half moon.
There must have been some good moonlight. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I would expect also if you heard a plane above, two planes kind of in hot pursuit above you, you might look up and then you might see something kind of pop out of one and think, huh.
True.
Yeah. And I don't know if he was on the ground by the time his plane crashed. His plane crashed very shortly after he bailed out.
But it's several miles away.
Yeah, but even in the distance, there must have been a kind of a big kaboom.
Yeah, that plane. Have you seen the photos of his plane?
It was pretty messed up.
It did not survive that landing.
No, not so well. The fun aside about this farmer, he actually went to where the plane wreckage site was. After the Home Guard came and got Hess, took him off his hands, he went over and he found the plane crash site and he hid some parts in the bushes. And then after they'd hauled all the rest of the wreckage away, he went back and got those. And so he had those around for years. Yeah, I think he eventually sold
his
them.
Trophies.
Yeah, he gave one or two away, and I think a couple of the other ones he sold. Yeah, part of Rudolf Hess's plane. Very collectible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they hobbled back to his cottage. That's McLean's cottage, and they had a cup of tea. And McLean contacted the Home Guard, who showed up shortly thereafter with some police.
Hess was operating under a different name at this point, though.
He said his name was Captain Alfred Horn, and that he needed to speak with the Duke of Hamilton. And in another account I read, he told the Home Guard guys, tell the Duke of Hamilton that I have arrived.
But he was German, right? So he would have had a relatively thick accent.
Yeah. I mean, he spoke English fluently. He was
Sure.
actually raised in the English section of Alexandria, Egypt.
Okay.
So he did speak English.
So do you know about accent?
Oh,
I just
sure he
mean
had-
like if you have a German
Sure, he had
accent,
an accent.
in 1941 in England,
I am
people are going to be like, "Okay, Mr. Horn,
Uh-huh.
I'll get right on that."
I am absolutely positive he had a fairly distinct accent. He
Oh, yeah.
his English was good to speak. He evidently wasn't that good at interpreting English, though.
Yeah.
That was a difficulty for him for quite a while.
Which is weird, whenever I've tried to tackle a foreign language, I always find understanding it is easier for me than speaking it.
It's interesting. I
Really?
have some friends
Yeah.
who are fluent in like a stupid amount of languages, and a couple of them have been fluent since birth in both languages. And for them, it is hard to translate because they just think in both languages. So it's like a concept, and whatever language you're speaking in, they just know the words that they're trying to think, but they have to actually really think about what the word for that in the other language is.
Process it.
Yeah, they have to actually take a step back and say, okay, but if I were having this conversation in this other language, that lamp would be called that other word, So
Yeah.
I wonder if there was something like that going on.
Yeah, I don't know, but anyway, so there were some communication difficulties in this whole thing. Back to the Home Guard, they took him away to their little HQ, and according to one source that I found, there was actually a reception committee of military intelligence officers waiting at the airstrip of Hamilton's estate. I only heard that in one place, so I'm not sure if that's true or not. So apparently Hess's capture by the Home Guard was a little bit of a hitch in their plans. It might be, if they had indeed lured him under false pretenses to Britain, maybe they were planning on just secretly spiriting him away and never telling the public anything. But because he got captured by the Home Guard,
I hadn't thought about it in that way.
Yeah, and maybe that they were actually planning on trying to work something out, but that wouldn't necessarily be in popular opinion, so you would kind of want to take it slow.
Well, I was actually, as Joe said, that I was like, well, maybe they're trying to work something out of him with fists and do
Yeah.
it completely under the radar, and nobody would ever know where they got their intelligence.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of reasons that you
Yeah.
would not want to publicize that guy was in your country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Probably Hitler would have kept it quiet, too.
Oh,
It was embarrassing for him.
yeah.
Yeah. So the whole thing could have been kept a secret, except oops, he didn't make his target. So yeah, he got captured. Anyway, supposedly it was this reception committee that caught up with Hess in Home Guard custody, and they persuaded the Home Guard people to finally let him go. And so they took him to Maryhill Barracks near Glasgow, Scotland. And then the Duke of Hamilton did arrive the next day to see Hess, and that's when Hess revealed his true identity and said, I think the words were, quote, I am here to save the world. Something like that. Something melodramatic like that.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, but he wanted to work out a peace deal.
This is one thing I love about Germans. They are so direct. It's, I'm not going to work up to it. I'm going to save everybody. Let me do that now.
Well, I'm not really going to save the world, just Germany and England.
Well, that's all the world that he cares about.
Pretty much, yeah. One of the concessions that he apparently put forward was that Germany would withdraw from Western Europe, except for parts of France, like Alsace and Lorraine, they were going to keep. They would allow Britain to keep its overseas possessions, and in return, they wanted a free hand in Eastern Europe and Russia. They would also try to mediate a settlement between Britain and Italy, and also they said that they would buy the full output of Allied war industries production while they were converting back to peacetime uses to help avoid any economic downturn.
So I have a lot of problems with this, but I'm going to wait until we get into the theory section because there's all kinds of holes in this for me.
Yeah, well apparently Hess had a full-blown peace proposal, which was eventually, I think, presented to Churchill. He met with the Duke of Hamilton. Churchill did, that is. And they met with the War Cabinet, and apparently there was no interest in a peace deal. They didn't tell Hess this for a while.
Well, I mean, it's not surprising to me that Britain didn't think there was any reason for a peace deal, right? I mean, the whole reason that everybody was going to war was like because the Nazis are bad and we don't like what they're doing, right? It wasn't, they're coming to get us, so we have to defend ourselves. It was more of a proactive approach.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that they wouldn't necessarily, I mean, that would, if they did have a peace deal, it would just basically give tacit consent to what was going on in the rest of the world that the Nazis controlled.
Exactly, because, I mean, that's why Britain declared wars, because they had a treaty with Poland, one defends the other. Well, Poland was invaded. Well, they had to actually do something about it. And so it was like that whole sense of honor. But at this time, the war was not really going that great for Britain.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
No. Speaking of Poland, when I was doing the research, one of the things that I always am really interested in, and this is just a weird thing about me, is posters from different eras. And one of the ones that was in Britain at the time was the Polish flag. And, it's in the typical 1940s illustration style. It's all torn up and it just says Poland, first to fight. It was really well done, but it was just so iconic for the area.
Wartime posters. They're so cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of them are a little offensive, though.
They're just stylistically.
No.
I'm sorry.
There are some serious stereotypes going on in some of those old posters. I will agree.
Well, yeah.
They are very, very brutal.
You know who actually produced some interesting World War II propaganda cartoons? Dr. Seuss. Have you ever seen any of his cartoons? Yeah. Some of them are seriously racist.
Yeah. Almost all of it is. I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Especially like the one where Uncle Sam is in an alley. He's backed up, and he's got all these rats that are coming after him, and they all have little Japanese faces on them.
Of course they do.
And it is very, very stereotypical.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but let's get away from that. I have another question, because this is something I've also never understood about Germany. Is why didn't they quit when they were ahead? I've never understood, and this is maybe just because I haven't.
The invasion of Russia?
Well, yeah. Why did they decide to do that? Why did they continue to push on into North Africa? I mean, they had essentially rolled through a huge part of Western Europe, and if they had just stopped and sat, that's how countries have been formed for thousands of years. Is we took it over and we just stayed, and eventually everybody went, okay, well that's yours. We don't like it, but that's yours.
Mm-hmm. Why didn't the Romans stop when they were ahead?
Well, I don't understand that either. That's why I'm asking. Is I've never understood why they didn't say.
Here's a question.
We took Europe. Let's just hold on to it for a while.
Steve. When you go gamble, do you stop when you're ahead?
Yeah.
Do you actually?
I try
Absolutely.
To.
I have a system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cheating doesn't count as a system.
No. I have X amount of money I'm going to gamble, and that money's in one pocket, and if I win, I put it in another pocket, and when the original bank is empty, if there's money left over, I walk out.
That's not stopping when you're ahead, though.
Oh, but if I win, let's say I'm on a slot machine, and I hit, and I win $100 on a nickel slot, I'll say, all right, well, now my bank, I can't go below, let's say, $80.
Right.
So I'm continually setting a bar that I will not drop below, so I'm always ahead.
Right. So
I do stop when I'm ahead.
I think the thought process is that you they were ahead because they had a bunch in their winning pocket, right? But they still had money in their other pocket. So it still felt like I'm winning, even though okay, well, if I gamble this one nickel.
Strategically, gambling is not the right metaphor.
Right.
It is such a big area that strategically the resources don't make sense to me. It's something that I've never understood.
I think people have a hard time stopping when they're ahead.
And that's probably it. I mean, Hitler had gone a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
I also think you get delusional.
It could have been that. Yeah, he definitely did bite off more than he could chew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he should have looked at the lessons of history. I mean, Napoleon didn't fare that well in Russia either, did he?
Nobody fares well in Russia.
I know.
What's that
joke? Russians barely fared well in Russia.
They didn't do so well.
What's the joke? Is come to Russia and our country will fight you. The actual terrain just kills people.
Yes.
The people of Russia don't have to do anything.
They have there's a lot of strategic depth there too.
Yeah.
I mean, they can afford to surrender.
Give and give.
Yeah.
And the ground will just eat up the troops that are invading.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, I took us way off track.
That's okay.
Yeah, we are way off track. Well, by the way, so far I haven't mentioned what happened back in Germany when Hitler found out about all this. This was the day after. This was May 11th. Hess had given his adjutant, a guy named Karl-Heinz Pinch, a letter to deliver to Hitler the day after Hess left, and also to basically tell him what he had done. So Pinch delivered his report. Apparently Hitler blew his stack.
He delivered it directly to Hitler.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, he was rather upset. It was unfortunate for Pinch because it's like shoot the messenger and all that stuff. He was arrested and jailed, and also a lot of other people around Hess were also arrested. Pinch was later released, but then he was sent to the Eastern Front to fight the Russians.
So he really wasn't released?
Not really.
Yeah, it was basically a big step down for him.
Is the allegation that Pinch knew what the letter contained? Like, did he know that Hess had left?
Yeah, I think that...
It wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to bed, give this letter to Hitler tomorrow?
Well, I don't think it was just him giving the letter to Hitler. I think he also gave him an oral report, basically saying, Hess has gone to...
Yeah, I can understand why you would arrest him then. I mean, it's more than just... Yeah, at that point, right?
Yeah, it totally is true.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. It wasn't just like literally he was like, I don't know, Hess just gave me this letter to give to you.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but apparently, and besides which, even if he hadn't said anything like that, I'm sure there would have been suspicions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When poor Pinch was then captured by the Russians.
Oh, yeah. He was captured by the Russians.
And tortured.
Tortured, held in captivity for like 10 years or something like that.
Wrote some crazy 11-page story or something.
It was a 28
confession.
Page. It was a 28-page, I don't know, confession or just telling all he knew or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was eventually found in the historical archives many years later. So Hitler said at the time that he felt like it was a huge betrayal because Hess was such a good friend. He also said, as I said earlier, that he thought that Hess had just gone over the edge. And again, Winston Churchill agreed with him on that one. They didn't agree on a whole lot. Yeah, and also Hitler apparently gave orders that Hess was to be shot on sight if he returned to Germany. Well, back to Hess in Scotland, he was shuffled around to various places, eventually wound up spending 13 months in a place called Camp Z.
He was in the Tower of London for a while.
Oh, yeah, before that, yeah. I just didn't want to give a laundry list of all the places.
No, when I noticed that, I was like, oh, he's another one of the... Because there was only 2 Germans that were in the tower ever, and he was one of them.
Yeah, lucky him. Camp Z was a mansion in the town of Mitchett, outside of London, kind of southwest of London. And by the way, I'm sure I'll get at least one email telling me that it's actually pronounced Mitch or Mitt.
Or Mitt.
Yeah, I did look it up on the internet, and supposedly it is pronounced Mitchett, so I hope that's right. But yeah, if I'm wrong, let me know. So at this point, Hess really saw himself as a diplomatic emissary, and he demanded to be sent back to Germany. Well, the British didn't
under
see it that
asylum.
way.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Or no, it's not asylum. What is it called?
Like diplomatic immunity
Thank
or something.
you.
But
Yes.
it's like the problem is Hess swore the whole time that Hitler never had any clue that he was going to leave and go to Britain. And so because of that, because he essentially hadn't really been sent by the German government as an official emissary, Churchill and the gang felt like, well, we can keep him.
Yeah. I mean, I think I understand that empirically, but I understand Hess's argument too, right? He's like third in command of the German government, so he sent himself on a mission, and they're saying, no, the German government didn't send you.
Yeah.
But
well, the problem is that his position was a puppet position.
Oh, for sure.
He had absolutely no power. He had been progressively pushed farther and farther out of the power structure of the regime for years.
But we all know that guy, right? The guy the Dwight Schrute of the group, right?
Uh-huh.
That's, assistant to the manager, and he keeps saying, yeah, I'm the assistant manager, and it's like, no, you're the assistant to the manager. You keep getting pushed out and told no, but you think that you are so much more. So I can understand his argument. It may mean that he went kind of loopy, but...
Or it might be...
overstepped his bounds, yeah.
Yeah, it might be he thought this was a way to really,
He thought Hitler wanted this.
Yeah, he did.
He thought he was doing a good favor for his good buddy.
Yeah, he was extremely loyal to Hitler. I mean, even though Hitler said he thought this was a betrayal, I don't think Hess saw it that way at all. He was trying to do him a favor.
It's possible.
And it's alleged that maybe Hitler didn't think that at first, but I know we're going to get into all of this stuff, so we'll...
Yeah, there are people who say otherwise. Yeah.
I was just going to throw out there that it's also possible that, Hitler said offhandedly, yeah, I totally want peace with Britain, and didn't remember it at all. And then, Hess starts planning and plotting and thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best surprise for Hitler when I'm done.
Yeah, he's going to love it.
He's going to love it.
Yeah.
And Hitler's like, what do you mean I said that? I never said that. Oh.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, crap.
Oh, I was joking.
Yeah, it's in the papers, dude.
Remember that time you bedazzled an entire fighter plane for me and I said I didn't really want that? Same situation.
Same thing. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So, but anyway.
I'm having a hard time. I identify with Hess. I'm sorry.
It's because you like to bedazzle things.
Yeah, it's true. And steal planes.
And history, certainly, if Hess had been successful, history would have turned out a little differently.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Camp Z. Hess was there for 13 months, as I said. He was, of course, I'm sure, being interrogated.
Surely.
Yeah, at one point he tried to kill himself by throwing himself over a staircase railing because he was depressed. He was pretty disappointed that his peace plan hadn't worked out.
His peace plan didn't work out. He was a prisoner.
Yeah.
He was like, he couldn't be friends with his friends anymore.
Yeah.
Probably being tortured.
His family, he wasn't going to see his family again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot to be depressed about.
Yeah.
And he might have also felt that he had a patriotic duty to kill himself before the British wrung too many secrets out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he didn't succeed, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, he just broke his leg pretty severely, too. He had to be in traction for like 12 weeks. Yeah, that would not be fun.
No fun.
No fun
Yeah.
at all. Just a note to our listeners, throwing yourself down a staircase, not the best. Or over a staircase railing, not the best way to do it.
No, not a reliable way to do
well,
it,
if it's only 2 or 3 steps, you're not going to hurt yourself.
Yeah, it was more than that.
You might twist your ankle.
Yeah.
Wrench it severely.
Wrench it severely.
Yeah. Anyway, after he recovered from his leg thing, Hess was sent to a military hospital in South Wales. He stayed in his military hospital till the end of the war, and apparently that was a good place. It was a hospital not only for military members but also for POWs. So it was a fairly secure place, not like your ordinary hospital. Mm-hmm. It actually required fewer guards than Camp Z did.
He tried to kill himself when he was there too, didn't he?
He did. He tried to stab himself with a bread knife. It didn't work out so well either. Apparently, it
so
only
many
took
jokes.
2 stitches.
2 stitches
to sew it up.
Man, my brother busted open his chin and it took more than that.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a half-hearted attempt. I could never stab myself to death.
That would be a hard way to go.
That would be tough. People do it, but it would be hard.
I think people, yeah.
You really would want to have to die.
You have some serious resolve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, as you know, in the end, Germany surrendered. You guys did know that, right?
What?
Yeah.
I thought they won.
No.
No,
I
that's
thought we
the
were
Man
speaking
in the
German
High
right
Castle.
now.
That's wrong. That's not real life. No.
Oh.
Not real life?
It's TV.
I
Yeah.
might be from an alternate universe, though.
You probably are.
We've wondered that about you for
I
a while.
know, I'm sorry. Also, it's Bernstein, not Bernstein.
Bernstein. After the surrender in October 1945, Hess was sent to Nuremberg to face the International Military Tribunal, a.k.a. the Nuremberg Trials. You've heard of those, I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty well known. He was charged with conspiracy to commit crimes, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity.
Oh, crimes against peace.
Yeah, I know.
Come on,
he was
dude.
He was trying to make peace.
He was trying.
Yeah. Well, anyway, luckily for him, since he sat out most of the war, it was really pretty hard to get convictions on the war crimes and crimes against humanity. But he was found guilty of conspiracy and, again, crimes against peace and sentenced to life in prison. Apparently, the Soviet judge in the trial wanted him to die by hanging.
That doesn't surprise
They
me.
had a real thing against him.
They really did.
It's strange.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, they really didn't like Hess. And anyway, the French judge wanted to give him 20 years in prison, which is probably a little more fair.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Nobody else got life.
There were,
or was it there was a couple that got life who didn't live very long?
There were 3 that got life. Of the 7 people that were sent to prison, 3 of them got life, and then the other 4 got 15 or 20 years, depending. I don't remember which ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of them got released early.
Except for Hess.
Yeah, he went to Spandau prison in West Berlin, which was used exclusively for the 7 prisoners who were convicted but not put to death. So this prison was a fairly large one. It has 600 cells, or I should say it had 600 cells. It's not there anymore.
But they only had 7 prisoners?
But only 7 prisoners.
Aww.
Yeah. They were these former high-ranking Nazis. It was run by the 4 powers. That's the U.S., Britain, France, and the USSR. And they all supplied the guards. And along about 1966, there were only 3 prisoners left in Spandau. As I said before, it had 600 cells. Yeah, you'd be rattling around that place.
Mm-hmm. For days and never see anybody.
Yeah. In October 1966, Albert Speer and Baldar von Schurek finished their sentences, and they left. And so from that time on until his death in 1987, Rudolf Hess was the only inmate at Spandau prison. 21 years. That's all by yourself in this prison.
And you can't talk to anybody.
He could have very limited visits with his family.
Well, but
I remember. And there were guards, right?
There were guards. You could talk to the guards, but the guards were constantly rotating in and out from different countries and stuff.
But I also remember that there was sanctions on what he could talk about.
Yeah, he wasn't allowed to talk about his peace mission.
Or certain things about what he had done while he was with the Nazi Party. I remember there was... it was strange to me, the clampdown on certain topics.
Yeah, no, it really is true. He was not just allowed to talk freely.
Did that not apply to all of the prisoners?
I don't know. I just sort of researched this from the Hess point of view. I'm sure there were a lot of restrictions on their behavior. I mean,
but even if it was that way for everybody, it probably didn't end up being as extreme because they had other German prisoners to associate with, so they at least had some shared common bond. Whereas when it's a set of guards who rotate every year, you can't make any personal connections.
Nah, not really. I mean, there were a few longer-term employees. Like he had a friendship with the warden at one time. I'll tell you more about that later. That was interesting. But I